living room having coffee. There's the bone of Jude the Apostle. There's an exorcist. Life is weird. If I just read the Gospels, just read the book of Acts, wouldn't you assume that God is still doing some cool stuff? And that was the big problem for me. I was like, I just don't see a lot of cool stuff. So I started down this rabbit hole of just asking every person I knew who was a sincere Christian, tell me a cool God story. And I got so many cool stories. Jesus, he said all this stuff was going to happen. He spends a third of his time casting out demons.
I think you were alluding to something more that you experienced.
Yeah. How much time do I have?
Hey everyone, welcome back to the Lila Rose Show. Today I'm sitting down with Ryan Bethea, who is the producer and the genius behind the Exorcist Files, which is a hit podcast with millions of downloads. You have probably seen Father Carlos Martins on this show before. He is one of the also hosts of the Exorcist Files, and it is a fascinating show that really helps people understand the supernatural. Ryan is also the producer of a new show called Heaven and Earth, which traces miracles that are happening every single day across the world. Did you know? This fascinating conversation, I think, will be inspiring for you because the reality is we don't just live in a physical realm. We live in a spiritual realm as well. As always, don't forget to subscribe to the show wherever you listen to your podcast. And if you're here on YouTube, make sure you are subscribed and hit that notification bell. Ryan Bethea, welcome to the podcast. You have been doing some very cool things. I think I first met you a few years ago at that retreat.
We actually met before that.
Okay.
So I was introduced to you through a friend about 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, because you had just started live action and someone said, hey,
wow. Okay.
I think, were you living in LA?
Yes.
Yes. And they said, hey, they're new to LA or something like that. And they could use some friends because, LA's full.
Were you my friend?
I don't want to put you on blast here, but I did respond and you never returned the email.
Okay. So I missed out on a friend.
But you also were kind of building a massive organization and I think we're pretty busy and I probably have more free time than you.
But you're producing amazing projects, which is very exciting. And you have your own YouTube show, which you guys can check out. It's Camping with Ryan, right?
That's close. It's called Ryan Bethea Show. Yeah, that was, we actually, that's the first big podcast I did. I bought an old airport shuttle bus from like Avis or something, tore out the insides, put a campfire in it, and drove across the country with no plan other than see who God pairs us up with. And we got to interview so many cool celebs. I mean, some have called it the best podcast since the Lila Rose Show.
Nice.
It was really fun.
I'll take it, Ryan. The Exorcist Files is crazy, and you are the mastermind behind that. Obviously, Father Carlos Martins has done amazing work with that, but your storytelling and even just coming up with the concept of doing a podcast that's focused on exorcism, I think a decade ago would not have maybe been a thing. I think you had this vision for it because you are very clued into the spiritual realities around us. And so I'd love to hear just your background, why you got into media and why particularly you're getting into such faith-driven media, where it's not like, oh, these are Christian films, but it's content about the supernatural. It's content about the exorcisms, content about miracles, and all these other things that people are mind blown by. Everyday people that don't even maybe have their own faith when they discover it for the first time.
Yeah. So one, thanks for having me. I love talking about this stuff. And it's weird. I don't know if you feel this way, but sometimes when you get saturated in this stuff, you forget how weird it sounds to someone who, like, I will meet people, and I had a friend bring some of his colleagues from a big brand. So when I don't do this stuff, I actually have an agency. So I write comedy commercials. What's really funny is I write comedy commercials and do digital marketing. All this exploring the supernatural stuff literally was a side passion that is thankfully turned into something much bigger. But I remember bringing them out to dinner, and he knows what I do, but he kind of left it out. And so he's like, hey, by the way, just let him know, you're a digital marketer, right? But you can't not say it. And they kept pressing everything. I was like, so like, what else do you do besides work, et cetera, right? And I looked at him, I was like, can I tell them, right? And I go, yeah, I kind of host this show on exorcism, and you can hear every fork just drop. And like, what?
And you're like, and I have the relic of St. Jude's broken leg in my bathroom right now.
That was, I don't have Jude's relic in my bathroom, just so for the fans don't know that. I actually,
something like that, right?
No, I did have someone send me a first class relic of Saint Maria Goretti. And if you had asked me 5 years ago, what is a first class relic? I'm like, I didn't know there's classes of relics.
What is a first class relic?
That's an actual piece of a saint, right? That's wild to think about. And so we get that from scripture. I think it's 2 Kings where they toss in a body so they're kind of startled and they throw this body. These guys are moving a a body. I think it's a bunch of bandits, and they throw this body, and it happens to come in contact with the bones of Elisha, and it's instantly resurrected. And so we go, oh, that would be a first-class relic. And so I had no exposure to relics or any of this stuff. There was a moment 2 years ago where I was sitting in a kitchen, and the arm of St. Jude was, because it was traveling on tour, and it was on the counter, and I'm having coffee, and I'm going, I'm sitting in a living room with an exorcist. We had rented this house to film some content, and I'm going, I'm having coffee. There's the bone of Jude the Apostle. There's an exorcist. Life is weird. Like, what is going on here? But no, I became passionate mainly because I was having a tough time with faith a few years ago, mainly just because like Christianity to me makes the most intellectual sense of a bunch of imperfect explanations. I don't think you'll ever be able to fully reason, like no one's gonna be able to prove the origins of the universe. Science can speculate, we can guess and say it's created, but at the end of the day, you don't know. And for most of us, and for me, and I wrestle with this because experience can't be the only thing, because obviously the Christian walk is filled with a lot of rough experiences, right? Somehow it's crept in a lot of our thinking, and this crept in for me too. Maybe it's kind of an American thing, like, oh, follow God, all will be well with you. And that's weird because that's in no way the experience of anyone close to Christ. However, you do read these like promises, and I was having a tough time because I'd read the Psalms. Like, I've never seen the righteous go hungry. I'm pretty sure a lot of good people starve to death every year. How do I make of that, right? And so intellectually, I was like, well, human nature, the Bible seems to really describe human nature well. But also, if I just read the Gospels and I just read the book of Acts, that's it. Wouldn't you assume that God is still doing some cool stuff? And that was the big problem for me. I was like, I just don't see a lot of cool stuff. And you hear about it around the world that Christianity is exploding. And Paul says, right, did I come to you in word or in power and deed? And I thought, I need to see some power. And that's not the reason, that's not the only reason to believe. And obviously you can't rely your experience on just miracles and acts because that's not something sustainable. But I was like, you should see something. And so I started down this rabbit hole of just asking every person I knew who was a sincere Christian, walked with the Lord for a decade or so or more, tell me a cool God story. And I got so many cool stories to the point where it gets actually kind of infuriating. You're like, okay, I'm the common denominator. Like, everyone has had a cool God moment but me. And I'm talking like, I met my spouse because I was praying, Lord, there was this person 20 years ago, and I think that was the person I was supposed to meet. And I just always had the sense they got away. So if that was you, bring it back. And they bump into him in a grocery store an hour later.
That's awesome.
Right? Results may vary. I want to be very clear.
Yes.
Someone going in for heart surgery, and both doctors had said, or initial, an angiogram, and said, hey, you have some significant blockages. And then they get prayed over, and someone has a word and says, I feel like the Lord's saying the doctor's gonna be confounded. And then the next day they open it up and they go, there's no blockage. We literally are confounded. And you hear these stories and you go, oh my gosh, I want that to be my experience. So I started just really going after God for this stuff. And it led me to my own kind of personal experience where I finally was, if the term would be rewarded, because I don't want to say it's an earned thing, but it was finally God was like, I do think when we pursue God in a certain way, especially the way in the New Testament, you see all these crazy actions to get, crawling through crowds, screaming, lowering friends through roofs. It feels like Jesus kind of smiles when you go after him like that. And then I just had this like reciprocation, and I had something really cool happen. And I told this story to a friend at a major streamer, and he goes, that's a great show idea. You should just collect awesome stories. So I was like, great.
What happened to you?
Well, I'll tell that story. That's a little bit longer one. I can remind me, and we'll go. I'll get to that one. But he says, that's a crazy cool story. And I said, great, let's make it even bigger. And at the time I was reading a book, and the book had documented and said that, hey, did you know the Catholic Church has a process for investigating miracles? And I went, what? So I learned about the canonization process, not because I thought I was going to be a saint, but if anyone's interested in becoming a saint, sadly, the fastest track is martyrdom, right? But let's take that off the table. After you go, you need to have 2 miracles with your name. And I was blown away by the rigor and the process. And so I said, this is really interesting. So I did what any producer would do. I posted on Facebook, does anyone know anyone at the Vatican? And someone responded, I actually have a friend who has a friend. So I just flew out there on faith. And I took a friend of mine who's a veteran producer, and we managed to, long story short, get connected with some really influential people there who said, love your vision, love your dream for this, but This involves medical records. You don't just walk in. These causes take years. This is not something you're going to be able to do a show on. But I said, what about spiritual warfare? And they said, well, there is someone we would actually, love to refer you to. And obviously there's no head exorcist, right? But I had a couple of say, this is someone who we send some really difficult cases to. You should talk to this person. And that was Father Carlos. So I got connected and I famously called him and he said, how'd you get this number? And I said, oh, I was given your number by our mutual friend. And he didn't believe me. He to this day will say, I thought you made it up and you just found out. He's like, this isn't a joke, kid. This is exorcism. This is not.
So it was the number people usually call if they need an exorcism.
Yeah, or just
not
a
press
or
hotline.
or it comes through a bishop, or it comes through another priest.
Who are you, Ryan?
Not some Protestant who has never met. Going, wait, how'd you get my number? I mean, it was like telemarketer and then me.
That is so funny.
And so, but
little did he know that you would be his best friend.
I don't know if he would say I'm his best friend, but I am his co-producer.
You're his co-producer
and good friend. No, but he. So we started talking for a few months and he told me some stories and I went, which are now famously, produced into the Exorcist Files show. But he said that he was very concerned about Hollywood and its way it glamorized and the way it glorified, because it is attention, right? There's a lot there's no rule that an exorcist has to be secret, but there is a tendency that it's like car crashes. We all look at them.
Yeah.
Right. And I mean, I'm sure you've had spiritual warfare guests on. I am going to guess, hot take, that those episodes do well, right? Any mention of spiritual, it's a popular topic. Humans have a fascination. And
it's because I think we're so constantly heads down in the material, and that's American society. It's very consumeristic. It's very materialistic. It's not really concerned with the supernatural on the day-to-day basis. And so I think there's a starvation for God that we're all made for. We're all made for him. And there's a starvation for the things of God, which is why the supernatural topics are so fascinating to people. EveryLife.com is America's pro-life baby diaper and wipes company. I love EveryLife.com and I use EveryLife diapers and wipes for my little ones because these are a best-in-class product that are clean. There's no harmful dyes or fragrances or phthalates in this product. It is designed to be healthy for your little one and good for your little one's skin. If you go to EveryLife.com/join today, by joining the Changing Lives Club, you not only get 10% off your monthly diaper and wipe subscription, in addition to that, you'll get a free tote bag, and EveryLife.com will donate a box of diapers and wipes to a mother and baby in need. And I'm excited to share, EveryLife.com is now offering training pants for your little one. These are 12-hour leak-proof training pants, pull-ups for that little one that is maybe potty training. You got to check them out. EveryLife also has just come out with their new shampoo and baby wash and lotion package. The product is amazing. I have already started to use it. That's EveryLife.com/join. Use the code Lila.
Like if you went to the average person and said, hey, I think most things are medical. Like we live in a broken world. We have broken biology, right? We're dying, right? That's the nature of the world. But to even postulate, by the way, you might have a spiritual cause to this, right? That's, for so long, that was ignored. There was a guy named Derek Prince who was a big evangelist in the 50s and 60s, and he wrote this book called They Shall Expel Demons. And he talked about battling with depression for decades. And then one day in prayer, the Lord said, rebuke the spirit of depression. And he's like, what? He's like, all right, like, Lord, I ask, not in my power, but your power, I rebuke a spirit of depression. And he goes, instantly healed. And for him, that was his journey. But it started this process where he's like, in his time, they weren't doing, like, if you came and said, hey, you have a spiritual, they're like, no, you're baptized Christian. You can't have problems. That's just not a thing. There's a medication, there's something that needs to be tackled. So I am grateful and excited that we're finally opening our eyes to the fact that there just could be other causes. And I don't look running for this stuff everywhere. But, you go around the world, every culture except pretty much like, seems like our Western, scientific culture, like you mentioned evil spirits, like, of course that's a thing. Right. And so this show has really opened my eyes to that. And so when Father and I talked and he said, hey, look, like, the agreement point was, hey, Father, do you want to document the fact that there are, like, Ouija boards are something you shouldn't do, right? He goes, absolutely. Astrology is not something you should be involved with, right? Like, there's a rampant rise in occult activity because, to your point, people are super hungry for spiritual, right? So that vacuum is going to be filled. So let's put something out there. Also, this is a really great medium to, no pun intended, right? But this is a good medium to entertain while educating, right? Because there are certain folks who don't want to go sit for a homily, even if it is just 12 minutes, right? They want to go in and they want to be entertained. And you look at, I mean, you can't unknow this, but you look at exorcism content typically does very well. It's very interesting how secular and skeptic a lot of my friends are, or a lot of friends that I have are. But then when it comes to exorcism content, like, oh, we want to go see a Catholic Exorcist movie, right? That's scary. I mean, I know people who were converted because of The Exorcist, not because they had an experience.
Exorcist the movie.
Oh yeah, they said it was so terrifying that they ran, like left. I know one guy left the theater, ran home, and was like, I need to go to church right now. Right? Which you go,
wow.
It's not how I would like prefer everyone like come to know the Lord, but hey, fear of the Lord, beginning of wisdom. Right?
Yes.
So Father and I finally was like, hey, if you're going to do this, it needs to be stewarded well. It's not going to glorify, and it's going to be a teaching tool as well as entertainment, edutainment, if you will. And so we started off and started shopping it around Hollywood, and wouldn't you know, this little COVID thing happened. So I was like, great, God does not want this to happen right now. And then in a really cool story, because again, I wanted to do a podcast. I thought they would go, but TV was our big vision. And then a friend was fasting and praying for me, which good friends do. That's a good friend. So you know who you are. And said, hey, I want to introduce you to someone. And that person actually, interestingly, called me this morning. And they had worked with iHeartRadio. And we talked. And a week later, we had an offer to do it with iHeartRadio. And they loved the vision. I said, let's do an old-time radio drama. I grew up on those old radio shows where they would use tinfoil for the sound of thunder, you know, like opening a door. They'd actually have like a little door they'd open and close. And yeah, we got paired up with an incredible team there. And Father's cases, as you know, are just, I mean, they're what? These are the exceptions. I think anyone who doesn't know the show, we are profiling true stories that are reenacted and then turned into 3D binaural audio, which means surround sound when you put the headphones on. And he co-hosts it with me and narrates these cases with these reenactments. But these cases are also extreme. We picked them because they each teach a lesson, but they're not, I mean, a lot of these cases are people who are heavily involved in the occult, serious and like open doors, right? This is not your average thing. And one thing I really appreciated is now having interviewed, you know, over a dozen exorcists who take it very seriously. They all take it seriously. They're not anxious to jump in front of a camera. They're like, it's a very serious thing. And they're also like, yeah, it's also very rare. Like most of the time we look for mental illness, natural causes. And then when it's real, when it's spiritual, great. We know how to handle it.
I think that's very encouraging. And we've had a few exorcists on the show, including Father Carlos Martins. And when they say, okay, this is not like the devil's behind every corner, because I think we can tend to give too much credence to the devil too, and it's possible to be too fascinated by the devil, right? But at the same time, it's possible to ignore these spiritual realities as well and to pretend like they don't exist. So there's some kind of happy middle. And then again, like you're describing, if you approach studying exorcism as an example or learning about exorcism with an eye towards, okay, what can I learn about who God is through this, God's justice and his mercy? I think that also is a different approach. And I know Father Carlos is so beautiful at sharing about God's mercy. Like that is ultimately his message. And the other exorcists we've had on this show, that is their message. It's a message of God's mercy, God's providence, God's love. And so you can't help but be encouraged by that. It's not just some scary, spooky thing like a horror movie. It's this encouragement. And I think you've done that really well with your, I'm going to call it a ministry. I mean, I know it's a business. I know it's a, media, but I do think it's a ministry because you're approaching it with that lens as opposed to, I do think the Exorcist movie, I have not seen it. It's too terrifying for me.
It's pretty dated now. You could get by it. Some of the effects are.
It's less of like about God's mercy and love. That movie is my understanding. It's more of a.
No, it doesn't end.
It's more of a horror movie.
No, absolutely. Yeah. It just raised the awareness. But I will say to that point, we had a really beautiful moment in season 2. There's another exorcist, Father Zeta, who's just like super long beard, looks like Gandalf. Exactly when you say, I want an exorcist to walk in, that's who you want to walk in. All that was missing was a staff. Mm-hmm. Brilliant. He's actually got a degree in psychology. And he's just, he's super, just a really amazing man. But during the recording of one of the cases, he was sharing, because he actually contributed a story, and it got very emotional. We had to pause recording for a minute, and he had to kind of collect himself. In this story, this girl is tormented by demons, actually relapses. We cover the phenomenon that's alluded to in the Gospels.
How old was she?
She was a teenager. And she had gone astray, the first time in this story, her father had inadvertently dedicated her to demons.
Through Freemasonry? Or
No, through Santeria. And again, I don't know the dad, but I'm assuming it was again, these are again, people can disagree. They can say, this sounds crazy. I'm like a journalist. Crazy. I'm reporting, hey, when I interview a doctor or I interview an exorcist and they say, look, I don't know all the rules, but I do know when I cast the demon out, I said, how did you get in? This was the door, they said. So you can argue with me that it doesn't. And I don't know why 90 people play with a Ouija board. Nothing happens. They sell them at, toy stores and why one person, like in one of our cases, wasn't even the person who brought the Ouija board home. They were just invited to play and no one else got afflicted except this person. I don't know, right? I don't know all those details. But when I interview 10 exorcists and they all say, this is a door we see, I go, great. I'll trust you. I'll take your word for it.
Great. I'm going to close that door myself and not go there.
So in this case, I guess in this particular area, they were dedicating kids to local deities as part of and I'm going to imagine it was probably more like a cultural thing. Like not even no parent would probably knowingly bring on that harm but anyway, the demons claimed that was the entry point they had, got cast out. And then, as I'm sure your listeners are probably well aware of, there's that famous verse that, the demons cast out and it wanders through arid places and then it comes back and it looks to see if it can get back in and if the house is swept clean. And if there's nothing there occupying it, it'll bring back 7 spirits more wicked than it, right? And then the condition is worse than it was originally. And that phenomenon has been something that has been documented. So this was a case of repossession. So
sorry to interrupt, but had this girl received an exorcism and been delivered of possession, and then she didn't practice her faith? She didn't pray. What happened?
She went back into some habitual sin. Like
mortal sin.
Yeah, actually, I don't know. I wouldn't be able to classify what exactly is the degree of that, but it was enough to where
serious sin.
It was enough to be serious.
It wasn't like, oh, I was rude to my mother.
No. It was it wasn't like they broke their keto fast, right? Mm-hmm. It was so they went. She relapsed and started manifesting, and she had physiological problems too. And it's important to note the two are not mutually exclusive. You can totally have this because people will say, well, what about seizures and schizophrenia? Oh yeah, of course, all variables, right? And you can have both. But so she relapsed and it was way worse, right? And he tells the story. And these, without spoiling too much, the demons are driving her to this breaking point, right? And she almost died. And she was miraculously rescued at the last minute, right? Through an intercession of Saint Michael, the archangel, by her own, again, her words, and Father Zeta's. But he had to collect himself, and I don't think he would mind me sharing this, but it was a beautiful moment because he was like getting misty-eyed, and he goes, man, it's like we almost lost her, and he brought up this really beautiful, like to anyone who's doubting, you can doubt like whether they saw what they saw, stuff, but at the end of the day, it's like when you see these people who have like no money, it's not a commission, they're cloistered off in the middle of nowhere, right? And they get called in, and this is not a fun thing. No one, it's in the movies, it looks cool when you're Keanu Reeves as Constantine and you're bashing him in with your divine brass knuckles. But other time, it's praying for hours, right? And getting cussed at, right? And dealing with someone who's probably got a lot of issues going on. And so he breaks down and he goes, almost lost her. And he's like, you can say the prayers. You can do everything right. You are there as the priest. You are there to remind them and shepherd them, right? But at the end of the day, it's between that person and God, right? And God, above all that, has a sovereign plan for the timing in which he wants to affect liberation. But for a lot of people, and this is the scary thing that I heard, I shouldn't say scary, it's a sobering thought. It's based on who you ask. Half the people choose not to be liberated, right? Which is probably a commentary on how ensnaring sin is. And any of us who know, I got breaking news, like I've been a sinner, and there are things that like sin actually distorts your mind and it warps you. And you can see how we have a case where a guy literally walks away, goes, I don't want it. I'll take the side effects. This is a kid who is getting thrown through walls, like at a university by a rhinoceros-headed demon.
WeHeartNutrition.com is a vitamin and supplement company that provides the highest quality, researched back ingredients, customized and optimized to help you be healthy. What I also love about We Heart Nutrition is that this is a family-owned company, and they donate a full 10% back of all of their revenue to pregnancy resource centers to help moms and babies in need. So whether you are premenopausal or postmenopausal, whether you're looking to conceive, help improve your fertility, whether you're pregnant, and this is a great prenatal vitamin, or you're postnatal. Plus, I'm very excited to share this with my husband. Now We Heart Nutrition has come out with their first line of men's vitamins. And if you order today at weheartnutrition.com, get your vitamins, you can get 20% off using the code Lila. And if you spend at least $50, you will get a free signature bamboo capsule vitamin box. So go to weheartnutrition.com today. Use the code Lila at checkout to get 20% off your purchase. That's weheartnutrition.com. When he says, I'll take the side effects, I don't want it. Is it he doesn't want to live a certain other path? He doesn't want to trust in the mercy of God? Like, what is the thing typically that they're rejecting?
This episode called Predatory detailed a spirit that conferred upon this young college kid the alleged ability to manipulate women into being crazy attracted to him. And so he said, I want all, the demon was giving him like, basically like fulfilling all his lusts. And he said, and so Father cornered him and said, just do confession. We can get rid of this, but you got to disown this thing. And he goes, can I just do it without confession? Can I just say the prayers and I'll go away? Right. And Father said, that's not how it works. There's a great line in there. He's like, just because I wear a collar doesn't make me your dog. Right. And so finally he's like, fine, get out. Like, I turn you over. Like, Paul, good luck.
Have you met Dr. Sean Tobin?
Yes, actually, I have met Dr. Sean through you guys. Actually,
okay, yeah. Keely, obviously, here at the show, knows him well, and he's amazing. He's been on the show a few times, but one of the things that he has said a few times, which is really compelling about all of this, is that God is a God of love, and He wants to set us free. But if we don't trust in Him, we can't. He's not going to push freedom on us, right? And so what you're describing is so. It's just very compelling because this person in this example, he didn't want the freedom because he wasn't willing to trust that God's goodness was greater than his lust.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's scary. It also shows you just how sin's intoxicating, right? It had I'm sure Eve didn't bite the fruit because it was sucked, or it was lame. It was probably this is enticing. Whatever was said, there's a lot, right? It's always, the lie is always, it's better now than it could be. Right. And so, and it's triggering. It's a really serious, case. And again, what was really interesting is I got quite a few. The other thing too, I would say to people who think this is just nuts, and I get it. I know how it sounds. We've had psychologists. Dr. Tobin's a great example. Very smart guy. This is a learned man. This is not someone who just takes at face value everything. Right. And I do think there's a lot of people there are a lot of people who fake. I mean, I'm sure you talked about this with the exorcists you've had on, but there's a reason that hissing if someone touches a rosary to you is not considered a sign of possession, right? It could be, but people fake all the time. People also, in the movie The Exorcist, it's the medical team in the book, I should say. The medical team says, give Regan an exorcism. It doesn't work, of course, but it's a good placebo, right?
Why do people fake being possessed?
Well, one, there's people want attention, right? I've come from a pretty charismatic background. I can tell you that there are plenty of people who will be slain in the spirit for adulation. There are also, because we're humans, we're broken. The other part is you would want something to be spiritual, right? Because then it could get fixed, right? Which is why they have to be so careful to grant an exorcism, because you're essentially telling someone, yeah, we believe. And that's one thing I would say too. I was shocked at how hard it was to get an exorcism. I didn't know this going into it. I knew nothing. I had zero Catholic exposure going into this show. And I've been so grateful to learn so much. And just the process, it's hard to get an exorcism, as it should be. That being said, it's not hard to get help. I want to encourage people. If you got a problem, you can find a priest to people pray for you, right? And there's a difference. And and most people, and even Father Carlos would say this, right? The vast majority of people reporting problems that they think are spiritual are not being granted full-blown exorcisms like you see, in a movie, right? That's a serious thing that requires medical evaluation. Dr. Tobin is part of that process, and he'll help evaluate people, or has. Also, we've had Dr. Richard Gallagher on the show, who's a very eminent psychologist, and he's consulted on many cases. He has a great book, which I tell people, called Demonic Foes, which are just his experiences as a psychologist, saying, I've met people who just started speaking a strange language, or people blacking out who couldn't hear scripture or couldn't see it. And there could be a natural explanation, but then you go, is it also impossible that if these things are real, they also could be manipulating that? And I think people sometimes always, the other question we get is, where are the tapes? Show me the tapes. And I usually, show me the recordings. Why don't you videotape one for us? Just to prove
the
it.
demonic
of an exorcism. Yeah, prove it.
Yeah. Oh, of the exorcism.
And it's funny, in today's AI world, if someone sent you a tape, what's your first thing? Is this doctored? Is this real? Is this AI? Second part, I'm like, fine, show me, do you go to therapy with your spouse? Great. I want to see that tape right now. Right? No, it's the most intense private thing you can think of. I understand that.
Can it be filmed?
No.
It's against it's canonically.
I don't know if it's canonically. I just know that I've never met an exorcist who said like, it's just, it's extremely, it's all people are doing and saying, and it's like videotaping a confession, right? No bueno.
Right.
So it's wild. But I would say the fact that it's so difficult to get one is a mark of how serious they treat it. And the fact they bring in doctors to evaluate. Like I have met on the show psychologists who work with Father Martins, like to help evaluate cases. Right? I love that they go, yeah, you might need mental health, like help.
I think that's such an interesting point too that you're making, because those people that are pretty pious or they're really into faith, they really want to draw closer to God. And then they have your laundry list of normal problems that afflict us humans, right? Like they suffer with anxiety, or they struggle with depression, or they struggle with moods, or whatever their, relationship issues, or whatever it is, right? Or they hear spooky noises at night. I don't know. And it could be tempting to assign too much power to the devil than he actually possesses, right? Be like, well, am I being like oppressed by an evil spirit right now? Is this spiritual warfare? Or is this, I didn't have a good breakfast. I didn't get enough sleep. I'm not taking good enough care of my body or my mind or my psyche, whatever, or my soul on a natural level. And so therefore, there's these things that I'm struggling with. And I think that's parsing that is part of the job of like a Dr. Sean Tobin, of course. And I think that also gives a lot of confidence though too to people, any person, that there's a natural order that we can work within, and only occasionally, it's rare, that you're going to have some supernatural, preternatural overlay of some demonic activity. It's usually something like, oh, you need to get more sleep, or you need to take better care of yourself, or you do need to deal with, maybe trauma from your history, your past.
Yeah, that's a great point too, is every exorcist I've talked to is huge on therapy, right? Like they say there's wounds, we all have emotional wounds, and they fester. And again, I start with the premise, and I like to use non-absolute language because, could I be wrong about this? Of course. I go, but I was in an Uber a few weeks ago, and the driver goes, oh, I love, we were talking about podcasts, and he goes, what kind of podcast do you do? And I was like, all right, we're almost home. He can, we'll see if he flips out of this, right? And I shared, and he goes, that's so real. He goes, in my village where I'm from, right, it is common practice to dedicate children up on this mountain to like evil spirits.
Whoa.
Right? And you give them one so they don't touch the rest of your family. I was blown away. And I think it was something that just confirmed my experience. And he says,
sorry, they give them one of the children.
Yeah, they I don't know. He's like, they dedicate one of the children saying,
so that the other family members would be spared.
Yeah. Or the other kids would be spared. It was like a peace offering. Right. And I don't know, he didn't give me too much detail, and sure, maybe he's making it up, but it seemed pretty sincere. And he said, oh, I love the idea. He's like, people need to know it's a real thing there. And Jesus also is very real in their village. It's known as the one who can beat the other deities. Right. And I have another friend who's been on the show who did deliverance ministry with a prominent minister in Brazil for a long time. And again, same thing. He goes, dude, it's not fun. You shouldn't want to do this. You can like fall in love with the liberation, fall in love that people are getting freedom. And I tell people that too, is, hey, you can think this is crazy. You can think it's scary. You can think that this is unnecessarily lit, but rejoice in the fact that people are finding help, even if you think it's placebo, right? If people are getting free, let's all celebrate that. And also at this point, we've gotten thousands of emails now from people say, I found a new faith because of this show, right?
Amazing.
Every week.
Thousands of emails.
Yeah. And every week I get an email, at least a couple usually, someone saying, hey, your show finally articulated something. My friends think I'm nuts, right? But I've been experiencing this, hearing someone else go through this. Thank you for validating this, right? Because we've been told for so long, you're Christian, you can't have a spirit problem. And I just go back to the book of Job and I go, I know that's wisdom literature. We can debate the hermeneutics of it. But at the end of the day, if we didn't know that first part, right, about Satan's wager with God, you would look at Job and you say, wow, this guy lost family members. We've all lost family members. This guy, economic ruin. We've all faced hard times financially. And this guy also got really sick, right? We've all faced illness, right? And the whole time people are like, what'd you do wrong? Just like confess your sin before God. And we don't get a reason. And the important thing in that book, we never get an answer, right? But it was entirely spiritual. That entire thing was a spiritual like assault from the enemy. And we didn't know about it. I mean, we as the reader, we get to know, but he had no idea. And then at the end, God doesn't go, dude, I'm so sorry. I had this wager. I had to prove Satan wrong in front of everybody, right? It was just like, who are you? Right? I am God, right? But he blessed the latter days more than the former. And so that story gives me peace that like, you know what, like there could be a lot considered. There could be spiritual causes, right? We are not just like body, like we are mind, body, and spirit. And is it that crazy to think that we could have spiritual afflictions? And the good news is if there is spiritual afflictions, right, then we can treat people. Like what is Christ's big mission, right? He came to abolish the works of the devil.
As you may know, porn addiction is on the rise for both women and men today. The porn industry is a $1 billion industry preying off of vulnerable men and women. The good news is that there is a solution, and our show is proud to partner with CovenantEyes.com. CovenantEyes.com is not only something to block explicit material on your phone, your tablet, or your laptop, but CovenantEyes.com is also a community to give you strength to choose good things instead of to choose the destruction of porn. For over 25 years, Covenant Eyes has been helping thousands of people break free and stay free from porn addiction. Whether you're a parent protecting your kids, a husband searching for accountability, or a wife searching for accountability, or somebody who just wants to make sure that porn doesn't make it onto your screen, CovenantEyes.com has got you covered. And right now, Covenant Eyes is offering a free 30-day trial specifically for listeners of this show. So you can go to CovenantEyes.com and get a free 30-day trial using the code Lila. That's CovenantEyes.com. Use the code Lila for a free 30-day trial. Start your journey to freedom today.
Once you do a show like this and you see it and you like read the scriptures, like, oh, Jesus, like he said all this stuff was going to happen, right? Like he goes around casting. That's the thing too. I don't know how we lost this, but like he spends a third of his time casting out demons. Like it's a thing, right? And so if he says, hey, you're going to do all the things I do, right? That should be a thing. Or in the sense, maybe, you know, we could argue that like, at least you're going to face spiritual afflictions, right? And don't be surprised. But remember, there's that, I think it was the man who was born blind, and maybe the woman who's bleeding, but it was the man who was born blind. And everyone's like, who sinned that this guy should be born blind? And he goes, no. He's like, this one was literally born blind so that the works of God could be made manifest. And so God permits this stuff so that he can show off. And that's the beautiful part, is like these people are getting liberated everywhere. And I think the best part of the good news is that, you know, you talk to all these exorcists and they're like, they love this. If Satan is real, if these minions are real, if this whole thing is real, if there are evil agents trying to torment us and lead us away from God, they are actually being co-opted by God, despite their best attempt, to actually lead us closer to God. And they are the ultimate pawn in his scheme. And it's just got to drive them nuts. And so I would encourage people, like, you know, that's consider that we live in a bubble, and just know that if you travel around the world to so many places, they're like, evil, of course those are real, right? And then Jesus is getting famous because he's known as the one who, like, the spirits respond to, right? Which is very cool. So
that's very, very cool. We're filming this the day that the Pope was announced, so we have Pope Leo the 14th. But what you're speaking about reminds me about Pope Leo the 13th. Who Pope Leo the 14th is obviously now this. He was the predecessor for our new Pope. And it's very important when the Pope chooses a name. There's something special there. They're kind of signaling something that they're learning from, or they're kind of continuing the work of that prior Pope or saint that they're choosing the name from. So anyways, Pope Leo the 13th wrote the St. Michael prayer,
oh, really?
Which is so cool. And what's really awesome about the St. Michael prayer, I've always thought, is that be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him. And I think the rebuke that, so St. Michael, the archangel, defend us in battle. I know you know this. Be our defense against the wickedness and snares of the devil. May God rebuke him. We humbly pray. What I think is so interesting about that is, like, what's the worst rebuke that Satan could endure? Being made to look puny and powerless and stupid, because he's been jealous of God, right? That's why Lucifer fell, as he wanted to be God. He said, I will not serve, non serviam. And so when all the angels had the choice, are you going to serve God or not? Satan chose, I'm not going to serve God. And then him and all the demons fell. But so the thing that he hates the most is to be shown to be stupid and puny and less than God. Like, he doesn't have the power. So it's like, catch him in his own snare. So what you're speaking to, which is really the beauty and the mercy of God is that even in all of these things of possessions and the occult and all of the darkness, right, of this kingdom of darkness, when God does these beautiful things where he uses these evils to bring about a great good, it makes Satan all the more angry.
Oh, yeah. Well,
but it's so beautiful to see.
Well, especially if he's helping lead people. I mean, because here's the thing, too, is, people recover from this stuff and now they know how real the enemy is. And so now they're more on fire. It's like,
yes,
that's the risk he takes. Again, if it's real, I ask people too, he's like, well, if this is real, where's the proof? And I go, if these things are real, if demons are real, and the only way they get basically like their butts kicked is to be made like aware of their presence and then removed. Like there's a reason cockroaches hide in corners, etc. Right? They hide because like if they were, who says they're going to follow your rules of scientific rigor? They're going to respond. I mean, here's the thing too. I don't know if you've had Chuck and Carrie on your show from Nefarious, but it's kind of a known thing. And again, you look at the history. I invite anyone, look at the history of the filming of the movie The Exorcist and all the bad things that went wrong.
Interesting.
Google what happened on the set of the Exorcism of Emily Rose. Way less dramatic, but still, like it's fun. Like you can look it up. People reported like clocks turning on by themselves.
And is that because Satan liked the movie or didn't like the movie?
I haven't asked him, thankfully.
Okay. Because I don't consider like The Exorcist or The Exorcism of Emily Rose to be movies that are like, oh, those are great, like faith affirming movies necessarily. I mean, I have the wrong view of them, especially maybe there's also a difference. The Exorcism of Emily Rowe, right? It's Rowe.
Emily Rose. Yeah, which is the famous case of Annalise Michel, which is a very famous case. But
did you think that ended well, that movie?
So Emily Rose, I really personally, I just enjoy. It's good film. I thought it was good filmmaking. I mean, it doesn't end well in the sense that, Annalise Michel died. Right. So in the real story, like she died.
But did she go to heaven?
Well, I think so. Yes. I mean, in the story, she was given a choice to come back, right, and to bear what do you call it? So that her suffering would be redeemed and used to make people aware of stuff, right? And I have stories we've collected for another show on miracles where I have a good friend who had a near-death experience, and God said, "You can come home now, and it'll be totally fine, no shame, right? But if you want to go back." For your daughters, his family, etc., it's going to be really rough, but I will be with you and I will use it. And so kind of like you have a choice, but all right, how can I not? Right. And so he's like, I said, I'm going back. Right. And then he went and woke up and it was like pain started, etc. And that experience anchors him. I know several stories like that, which is really something we don't think about too. Like I have a dear friend who lost a loved one and felt really led in the spirit. She really felt that this person was going to get healed. And when they didn't, and there's so many confirming and you go, what happened? And one thing that we've talked about, and again, I don't know this, but like does that happen sometimes where people say, hey, you have a choice. Like, are you ready to come home? Or is there stuff I want, is God saying, hey, actually you can come home now, but would you go back? I got some stuff for you to do. Right. And we don't know. Or maybe I wonder sometimes people were praying to heal, etc. And then maybe they're like in their spirit and they can't communicate and they're like, I'm ready to go home. Like my work here's done, So
that they got the ultimate healing, which is they got to go.
For sure.
They got to go home.
Oh yeah, we're all healed but like if those who believe, put their faith in Christ, right, ultimately find healing. We don't get it in the time we want. But I will say, I know lots of stories of healings happening today.
What that makes me think though is like alignment with your loved one in the request.
Yeah,
because it's like where two or more are gathered in my name, then those are obviously prayers that God hears, and ask and you will be answered, knock and the door will be open to you. But if you're not aligned in what you're requesting from God, then how does God parse that? How's God going to respond to that? Just an interesting question, because that person who's really suffering, they might want to go home.
No, for sure. That is a great question. And I mean, that's people, it's the same with exorcism too. Like, do you want to be healed? That's one thing that's really weird about these cases. And people can say the words, right? And it's probably not one or the other, right? Like, for example, with this guy that was being, this guy did not want to be thrown through walls, right? This guy didn't want to be physically abused by an evil spirit in this story. I'm guessing. I'm going to conjecture he didn't, but he also wanted the sin, and so which one's, because right, is it 100% one or the other? Mm-hmm. It's like, no, sin. If you've been involved, like especially some of these people that I've interviewed, and again, I didn't know them during the peak of their powers, but when I interview former like people who've been heavily in the cult and they tell me stories like, yeah, I used to astral plane, and I go, what? Like, yeah, I leave my body and just fly around. And I'm like, it's bonkers. I have no framework for this, right? So he'll take them at their word, right? But I go, say that was true. So you could just like travel anywhere, right? You could manipulate people, et cetera, right? You just could get anything you wanted. There's probably a broken part of you that would like say, wow, I'm going to, hey, by the way, can I get delivered and still have this power? And no, right? Like, we've had, I think a mutual friend, a former psychic on, right? It's like, you cannot go on telling futures, through demons.
I don't think we have had them on yet. We are going to have them on.
Yeah. And so,
but
we know people like that. And so you got to, you can't have God's like blessing without God's authority. Right. And so you got to pick who will you serve this day. And so that's what all these episodes we do. They climax in this epic moment where the person, and a lot of times it's forgiveness. That's one thing I've also been surprised at is maybe half the cases, the person has a wound of like, they have crazy unforgiveness towards someone. That's one of the doorways. And I have found that so freeing. Like, why is that in the Lord's Prayer? Why are we constantly told to forgive? Why are we told to turn the other cheek? Right. And it's forgiveness, like, and then forgiveness towards self. That's a huge one. I was shocked at how many exorcists said that was a doorway to demonic affliction. Like, you are God's temple. God made you, and to reject yourself, to hate yourself, to black you are, when you curse yourself, you are cursing God's beautiful creation, and you are basically saying, no, you erred in making me, right? So that's been something I've really deeply found, and we've done a lot of prayer together with people and just saying, hey, everyone, it's funny how many people say, if you close your eyes right now, is there someone you need to forgive? Right? Even if it's just a small, we always have someone who is currently bothering us. But for a lot of people, it's a serious, like, it's funny how I'd say 2 out of 3 people that I've like talked to, there's usually one person who wounded them. Right. And you go, forgive them, fathers, I forgive myself. Forgive me, fathers, I forgive them. And it's just really beautiful. And that's just so cool and so special. And so we had an episode that's one of my all-time favorites where this kid, his dad abandoned him and then died from drugs. And like the kid was abandoned, like it's rough. Like that's the thing too. You sympathize. Like not all these things where people are like, yo, I'm playing with a Ouija board and like sucks for you. And now I'm possessed. It's like, no, there's a lot we have one about a girl who had diagnosed schizophrenia. So I had a lot of psychologists write in about this episode. So we do have some audience who's like, and people should know there are psychologists who like are totally open to this. They're not very public about it. They email me. And this girl's dad abandoned her when she was like 9. And then the demon in this story, the alleged demon, appeared as her dad and said, can I come stay with you? Can I come be with you? And she would just start having hallucinations with him all the time. Right. And it's like, that is so insidious. Right. And then she had to forgive him as part of her exorcism. She had to say, I forgive my dad for abandoning.
And opening that door effectively for her to want this evil spirit to help her, thinking it was her dad. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I know. And it's
so
like
sad.
Deceiver. And then you go, the angel, even if he come disguised as an angel of light, and you go, so again, to always hit it on an upbeat point, just pray about everything. Yeah. We have an upcoming episode about ghosts, which was really fascinating.
Interesting.
4 people tell these crazy ghost stories. I mean, and you go, is it a demon? Is it a ghost? And I go, you know what? At the end of the day, as far as your prescribed behavior, pray about it.
Pray about it.
Worst case, nothing happens. Best case, you avoid something evil. Or in the case of something I'm still trying to wrap my head around, with Catholic theology, is you are helping someone who's currently in the waiting room.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. The potential evidence for purgatory, which is very interesting too.
There's some wild stories there.
I loved what Dr. Sean Tobin has said about this. Little devil, big God. Like at the end of the day, God is big and God is all powerful, and He's the one who writes the story, and that gives us all the confidence in the world. But Ryan, we went deep into Exorcist Files, which was awesome. And again, congratulations on all the work you're doing with that, on your new miracle show. It's just really amazing work, not just in the creation of it and the excellence that you create it with, but the way it's touching people. But you glossed over your story, which you got to leave us with, about your moment you said you were searching for seeing God working in the lives of your friends, and you heard all the stories, and then you were asking God for it to show up in your life. And I mean, I would just argue that our existence alone is the work of God, right? I mean, it's just
absolutely
amazing that we're human beings. But I think you were alluding to something more that you experienced.
Yeah. How much time do I have? And I'll, when we
How much time do you need for your...
I'd say, I can go, I can easily go 10 more minutes if you want. It's up to you. I want to respect your time. How much time we got?
Let's do 10 more minutes. Let's close it out with the
All right,
Ryan story.
We'll build up to something. So I know you'll appreciate this. So could you identify this object, counselor?
Looks a lot like a rosary to me.
That's right. It is a rosary. So I get made. I've somehow managed to offend both Catholics and Protestants in that I'm too heretical for one. I'm too heretical for either one now.
It's the fence sitting, Ryan.
It is the fence sitting. I'm defensive. But
fences are uncomfortable. Why spend too much time on them?
They are uncomfortable. No, I bring this because it's a cool story, and people do get weirded out sometimes by it. But I also try to tell people, like, hey, like before the rosary, there were people had beads they would pray psalms on. So this is like also almost every religion, every major religion has some sort of physical object that is associated with praying.
Well, the rosary. I mean, we had Gabby Castillo. I know you know him too, and he explains like this is just the Bible. I mean, it's scripture, holy scripture, and then asking for prayers. But the vast majority of the rosary, the prayers, it's from the Bible. They're just scripture verses. So.
Oh yeah, no, it's a meditation on the life of Christ, right?
Yes.
So that is one thing I'm deeply passionate about right now. I feel in my spirit, as weird as that might sound to some, but it's just like I just have a deep heart for unity. Right now, and again, I don't want to gloss over because there are significant doctrinal differences, and it's funny. People will get at each other's throats about certain things, but I'm like, look, at the end of the day, I want us to better understand each other. And that's because that's been the hugest blessing for me from making Exorcist Files is to say, what did I hear like about the Catholic Church? And then what did I actually study? And then meeting people and be like, okay, or Orthodox. I didn't know anyone Orthodox, right? It's been just such a journey, and also challenging to like, okay, let's think through, why do you believe what you believe? Just because someone told you it, or like, have you thought through it? So I'm deeply passionate about truth, and I say this to everyone, like truth wherever it leads, right?
And I just gotta say thank you for being that way, because it comes out in the media you're creating, and it's a really beautiful and I think world-changing disposition to have. You're not Catholic, but you're going into spaces that are Catholic with an openness and a love and a respect, and then you're still able to see the true and sincere faith of your Protestant brothers and sisters. And I think that's a beautiful a place of humility that you're coming from. So thank you.
Oh, well, thank you. It's an honor, and it's been, yeah. And again, because I'm tired of having people say this about both sides. Like I'm tired of having, my Catholic friends say, oh, those heretics, God help them. Right. Like, are they going to go? I don't know if they're going to make it. And then I have Protestants, the slide that's like, oh no, I know some Catholics that are saved. Right. And I'm like, well, I know some Protestants that aren't saved. Like, who knows? Right. Like it's just the judgment that we pass on so many people without knowing. And there are little things, for example, like relics, for example, right? Yeah. I have seen where relics become inadvertent objects of worship that displace the grander truth, right? We can get superstitious, right? Yeah. But I also would say, hey, look, it's written in Acts that they brought handkerchiefs and aprons and touched Paul, brought it back, healed the sick, and cast out demons, right? Now, was that prescriptive? I don't know. But the bottom line is it's in the Bible. Right? And the Elisha Bones story I shared, that is in scripture. So you go, okay. And then I hear testimonies of this. So I try to treat it as a journalist, right? Okay, well, I have people who have relic stories, right? Father was on tour for a year and a half, and I had lots of emails from people come in and people who shared and said, I was healed. And I go, God works in far bigger. I would ask anyone of any denomination to expect, hey, God might do something bigger than what we think, right? So my minor miracle, I'll get to my minor and then my major miracle. But my minor one is I have the privilege of going to a lot of conferences and media, and despite having a hit show, there's always people in the room that are just like infinitely more successful, bigger platform, et cetera, right? And I just was feeling really, I don't know. Sometimes I struggle with like just comparison issues, right? And I know, like I'm the only one who struggles with that, right? But and so and that's such a lie too, because you're like you are on your own journey, right? Everyone is there's own.
Only one of you,
God is with you, and He has His unique plan for you. Yeah. So do that race and forget about everyone's race. But I forget all the time that's the truth. So I called a friend of mine who I was at this crazy cool event, and there was this like room full of super influential people, right? And then me, and I had this thing a friend of mine gave me a Nap Institute, and so I put it in my pocket, and my friend's like, dude, you should just repent. I was like, what, repent? He's like, yeah, just repent that you are like coveting other people's like stuff, like
what a good friend to have that kind of be a straight shooter like that.
And I was like, wow, all right, he's a pastor too, and I was like, all right, so you know what I do? I'll put this in my pocket because I just, every now and then my hands, put my hand in my pocket. Every time I touch this rosary, I'm going to pray, God, if I'll just center me. Thank you for my bean field. Thank you for this line that you've given me. Thank you for my area, right? Let me be a good steward.
Wow.
And bless whoever I'm like, and if I'm envying someone, bless them. You picked them, right? You decided that you wanted them. Who am I to question general's orders?
Make them even more blessed.
That's right. Exactly.
That's
If you're
great.
backing him, I need to back him. Because there are people who have a lot of clout that I'm like, bless their heart, as we would say in the South, right? And so I was in the back of the room, and this person happened to be speaking, and I suddenly felt that kind of well up because they were talking like about the most influential Christian media, right? I put my hand pocket, I was like,
You're like Exorcist Files.
Lord bless them. I was like, bless them, Lord, thank you. And it was just in my heart, I was like, no, Lord, thank you for what I have. I have a ministry that's like helping people, all right? And at that moment, one of the guys on stage stops and goes, guys, hold on. We're talking about movies and like TV. We have to talk about podcasting if we're talking about Christian content. And I have to tell you, there is a show out there that has been the most transformative piece of Christian content I have ever experienced. And that is the Exorcist Files. And the creator is right back there in the room, right? So would you all turn around and give him a round of applause, right? And that proverb instantly, like, do not seek to exalt yourself. Wait for the king to bring you up, right?
Wow.
And I went, works, right? So
That's
beautiful. It was so
That's
beautiful. And just a good reminder that like, hey, wait your turn. God knows when to take you out of the shepherd's field and put you in he knows that he knows when you're ready for it too. It's a crime. It'd be a crime against you to put you in a place where you're not poised for success yet. And he knows. You don't know. You think you're ready. There's many things I thought I was ready for and I wasn't. And then to finish, so that's one little story. And profile, all this is relevant because I'm hosting a new show called Heaven Meets Earth with Christian Broadcast Network. And you might have heard the 700 Club. They've been documenting miracles for 60 years. There's a really cool connection actually between CBN and EWTN. Pat Robertson, who is the founder of CBN, and his granddaughter, Abby, is who I co-host with. Gabby, after hours, told me this story on the show, and I didn't know. And it was such a cool thing. He said, did you know that Pat Robertson showed Mother Angelica the TV station and gave her some time and taught her a little bit about the business because he wanted to have Catholics on there too.
How sweet.
And she goes, how much does one of these cost? And he gave her a number. And it was then that she went home and bought a satellite and all this, that famous story where she was like in the chapel praying and it's like, all right, your satellite's here. I don't have the money for it. And some guy's calling from the yacht saying, hey,
wow,
I saw your pamphlets and I need that. And so it was cool to hear that there was this connection between these two. So we each week document wild stories of answered prayers, healings, reconciliations from just really cool Christians. Like police officers say, you know what, Lord, be with me on the beat today. Where do you want to take me? Right? Like go there. And then crazy crime gets solved. Like what if? I'm not saying that's prescriptive for everybody, but like what if we just invite, or one guy's like, hey, I asked God where I should go to lunch. I'm like, really? And he's like, yeah, Chick-fil-A or Chipotle. No, he goes, I just go, God, like, is there someone you want me to meet today? I throw the question out there. I don't wait to be divinely led for each time. And then he shares a story where one day they didn't get an impression. They said, oh, we're craving Thai food. They go to a Thai restaurant and there's a guy waiting at the Thai restaurant who had been praying about meeting his friend for weeks and felt like God was like, hey, you need to come to this restaurant. And he shows up. He's like, you walked in here and I had to start praying for you. And it was the wildest, like, divine appointment. So you have little things like that, people getting healed. But for me, what started the whole thing was in that tough season of faith, basically was like, all right, Lord, I need you to speak. Like it has to be, because I don't feel like I hear your voice, right? And I know we don't live life from shouting. Like it needs, there's more often it's like Elijah, right? It's the still small voice, right? But every now and then God needs to shout sometimes, right? To get our attention. So I went on a hike. I was really praying about a big decision and it was a yes or no thing. And so I hiked up the top of this mountain and I was so sad. I'd been going through a tough time. I literally got in the dirt, like on my knees, and was just like, kind of what Christian Bale from Batman on God, like, where are you? It was just like, God. And he used some non-Christian language that would be bleeped out if I said it. And I was like, just raw though. And I think God really likes that when you're raw, right? He's like, we'll talk about the reverence later, but like, this is I can work with this, right? I feel like you're distant. I feel like I don't know you. I feel like, what's going on? I was like, fine. So this is not good. Don't do this. But God mercifully is okay with this because I'm still here. But I said, all right, you have an hour to say yes or no, or then I'm just going to go do what I want. Right. So I started walking down the mountain and this family shows up. I don't know where they were. Like I did not see them hiking. And they start yelling, Ryan, wait. Like, Ryan, wait, as I'm trying to hike down this mountain. And I'm going, There's clearly someone ahead named Ryan. But for the next 30 minutes, I'm like trying to pray and hear God's voice. And all I hear is this shouting, Ryan, wait. Ryan, wait. So I get to the bottom of the hill and I'm like, okay, that would be like, well, wait wasn't one of the answers. It was yes or no, right? So I called a friend and he goes, dude, what are the odds a family on a mountain is yelling Ryan, wait while you're praying for this? And I go, I mean, it's a coincidence, right? You know, but you're right. It's probably God speaking, right? So and then the next week, I just heard the words waiting. I turn on the radio. Tom Petty's The Waiting would come on. Just all those moments where you're like, you hear the word wait. And I'm like, well, maybe God doesn't subscribe to my yes or no. Maybe he's like, no, wait.
He wants more than an hour.
Yeah. And wait's sometimes tougher because there's no click. So wait is like, waiting also means you could be waiting on someone else. Maybe someone else is involved in the decision and he's working on them. I mean, there's a million variables. But it was Palm Sunday that happened. So Easter Sunday, like most miracles. Yeah, I know this is 5 years ago.
Okay.
By Easter Sunday, like many miracles, they don't last. I mean, how quickly the Israelites were like, let's go back, right? I mean, they walked through the ocean, the seas parted, and they were like, let's go back to Egypt. So no matter how dramatic the moment, man, don't count on it forever because like we need, it's a reason why we can't live miracle to miracle, right? We're grateful when they happen, but they are not the anchor. That being said, I'm still talking about the story, so it has been powerful. So that Sunday, I was like, that was a coincidence. That's all that was. I just like, whatever, right? So I said, God, you need to have someone call me and tell me that was a coincidence or else I'm not going to believe it. Again, forgive me, Lord.
That wasn't a coincidence.
Yeah, that was you.
Yeah.
And so that I was writing out my prayer journal and then I hear a brrr, and I was like, oh, it's my phone. I turn it off because, no phone during prayer journal. Open it up. And this guy in Nashville who I'd met once had texted me, and he didn't know anything. I hadn't talked to him in months, and he goes, hey, dude, I was praying for you this morning and felt like God had said that something happened to you like in the wilderness or something, and he wants you to know it was him and not a coincidence. And I went, well, I said phone call, but... And
like,
I went...
I guess I'm waiting.
And so I did, and I waited, and longer story. It turned into a really cool season where I just started collecting incredible stories, and it's such an honor to be able to tell them now. And I want to be very clear, like, because when you tell these miracle stories, right, we all know people who've lost loved ones, like I have prayed people into the ground, right? I've had people, a friend with brain cancer and prayed and he died. Also prayed for people with back pain and it gets instantly healed. And you go, I don't know, God, right? But it is important to know that God is doing cool things today. And I am seeing it. It's not in the timing always I want. I wish I could have a formula for it, right? Everyone wants to figure out the proprietary. I will say, a lot of people say they fast and pray. And one thing that came out with every interview we've done on this miracle series is the private time. All of these folks are like, it was privately me with the Lord preparing in private for anything I wanted him to do publicly. And it's been really inspiring. But I just want to encourage anyone out there that like, if you think you got a spiritual affliction, like go talk to someone, right? Interesting. Like, so do you know why most of the exorcism cases we have are female?
Why?
Because they ask for help. Guys ask for help, right? Guys probably get possessed more, but like fathers, like, it's like, yeah, why are there so many cases? Because they're the ones who are willing to say, I think I have a problem. We live a case where a guy's ignoring it, and so, but if you think you have a spiritual, maybe it could be spiritual, right? Ask for help, get prayer. If you need a healing, go for it. Be okay. Like, right. It may not happen, but it might. And to live in that tension is really difficult, but they're just ordinary people who are super smart, and are just walking with God, and he is doing cool things today. And that's been really encouraging. And so I want to encourage people, don't let the naturalistic, only science-driven narrative say that, miracles aren't happening today, because there are inexplicable things happening. People who were married and had affairs and divorced and then get back together and reconciled. I mean, there's cool stuff happening. And so let's just be optimistic and upbeat and go for it.
Amazing. Thank you, Ryan. Where can people find your work?
Oh, man. So you can go to exorcistfiles.tv if you want to start that journey. You can also go to heavenmeetsearth.com and listen to both sides. So listen to X-Files in the morning and then Miracles in the evening.
Love that.
I do have many people say, hey, I listen to X-Files at night, and they have their headphones in and they're by themselves. I was listening to an episode last night that I did proof, and I was doing the dishes and I was home alone. And like, I just like hear this and that's the audio. Someone's not in my house right now. It's pretty cool. So thank you for having me though.
Ryan,
and God
keep
bless
up the
you.
great work. This is awesome. God bless you. Thanks so much for listening to this episode of The Lila Rose Show. As always, if you enjoyed it, please do not forget to be subscribed to the show here on YouTube or over on podcast app. And please leave us a review and give us 5 stars. That helps the show reach more people. And a huge thank you to EWTN, Eternal Word Television Network, which is the largest religious broadcaster in the world. You can get access to Lila Rose Show episodes 24 hours in advance at EWTN.com/on-demand. And a big thank you to EWTN and their incredible mission to bring souls to Jesus.